Hi, this is Brianna David.
And this is Brianna Quintana.
And we're going to talk to you today about autism spectrum disorder.
What is autism? When it comes to autism, there is a wide range of characteristics that can be found. Children will fit onto the autism spectrum where they can, and then be characterized through the challenges that they face, such as challenges with social skills, speech, nonverbal communication, repetitive behavior, as well as each child having their own unique differences and strengths.
Some of the general characteristics that a child on the spectrum may have is that they view the world specifically rather than generally, so they don't see, a person as a certain way. It's like very, very specific. They also have a lot of sensitivities to light and sound, so it's really important that their environment is pretty stable. They really need fixed routines and rules, so if there's no routine or routines change, they need to be notified or aware that that's going to happen to avoid having breakdowns. They commonly lack eye contact. It's just part of being on the spectrum. They feel uncomfortable with that sense of closeness. And then also they tend to walk on their toes a lot. A lot of studies have found that children with autism just sort of have that physical characteristic about them. And their social miscues are pretty frequent. They don't know when someone's happy. They don't have a hard time understanding when someone's sad or if they're mad. And why. So those are just a few child with autism that surrounds autism. A study in 2014 showed that 1 in 45 children ages 3 to 17 were identified with autism spectrum disorder, which is quite a lot of people. It is 4.5 times more common among boys than girls. So you see 1 in 42 boys will have it, whereas girls 1 in 189 will have it. And there's more than 3.5 million Americans that live with autism spectrum disorder. It's a really, really common disorder to have. But as far as in schools, only 1.1% of students in schools are classified as having ASD, which was from a study found in 2014.
Classroom and teaching strategies and modifications are limit distractions. For instance, classroom does not have to have a bunch of visuals or lights or sound. That way the student is not distracted or that they're not getting headaches and stuff like that. Also would need to have a quiet place for them to go when they do happen to get a sensory overload. That way they can calm down and before they go back to the class. You can also use visuals through instruction, highlight important information, visuals to the schedule. This helps them to know when they need to move on to another activity. Use student strengths and interests within lessons and activities. This way, if a student likes superheroes, you can incorporate their favorite superheroes into lesson plans and activities to make it more engaging for them. You can also include sensory activities such as fidget toys and exercise so that if they are a bit hyperactive, they can have those things to help calm them down or to help release some of that energy. And then you would also want to allow time for one-on-one instruction with the student, whether it is the teacher working with the student or a TA working with the student. That way the student is able to grasp some of the learning better. And then one thing that you're going to want to modify in the classroom is to assess the environment for possible sensory overload. For instance, you don't want really, really bright lights all the time. You don't want music that is super loud or everybody in the class to be talking a lot. We're also going to want to develop rules such as with behavior, communication, and social that the students will have to follow and get used to following for once they get older. And then we're also going to want to change the classroom layout, have learning centers clearly defined, and instruction materials close to the student. And then you're going to want to educate their peers about those with autism so that the other general education students know about what autism is and that they're not making fun of them because they're different. And then we're also going to want to use role play to model appropriate behavior so that the student is better able to understand how to interact with others or how to go about completing activities.
Here's an implication of students. So the teacher might have classroom the classroom environment has to be positive in nature. Child has no chance of learning in the classroom. They also have to have a place to take refuge in. As Brianna was just saying, if they don't have some place that they can take a break, things can get really out of hand. The room needs to be free of any additional distractions that could be in place so that the child can focus. Flexible seating is a really great thing to take into account for children with autism because sometimes they need things like wobble cushions or like yoga balls, some other outlet for sitting. And having structured routines is an absolute necessity for a child in a classroom. Here are a few implications for academic instruction. Students with autism are often going to need modified work time, and that's based on their own needs. So as we mentioned, this is a spectrum. So some are going to be lower functioning and some will be higher functioning. So adaptations will have to change based on the child's need. And it's really important, as Brianna also said, to include interest in instruction. That's actually one of the key things that Temple Grandin mentions as well, that if you don't include their interest, you've already lost them.
Other implications for academic instruction are provide alternatives.
No worries.
Okay. Provide alternatives. Set realistic expectations, such as not expecting the student to be able to do all the work at one time, especially if there are some sensory issues, such as bright lights, or maybe they've been playing outside and the sounds are too loud for them. And then you're going to want to use visuals and stimuli to help get them engaged in various activities and lessons. Implications for social behavior. For social behavioral are schedule any break time where the student takes a break from the work or from playing just to cool down and to get ready for the next activity. You're going to want to use social stories, set goals for behavior. Talk to the student about how you expect them to behave for the day or how you expect them to behave during a certain activity. And then understand triggers to avoid difficulties. For instance, if a student has a trigger to very, very bright light in the classroom, then you're going to want to have dimmed light while they're in there so that they're not getting too frustrated or too and then okay, there will be tough times. Be flexible. So this means that when the student is having difficulties concentrating or when they're having their sensory overload and possible migraines, you're going to want to take them to a separate room, such as the quiet place, so that they can calm down, so that they can get over the anxiety that they may have at the time. Okay.
Here are just some resources that we use to help us collect some of the information we provided for you today. I hope you enjoyed listening to our presentation about autism spectrum disorder.